think on our feet, and so that we can adapt as necessary. Those are some very important parts of debating. So welcome to session 5 of our debate workshop series. Today we'll be delving into the crucial skills of preparing effective rebuttals and crafting compelling reply speeches, which are essential components for success in any debate. So we're going to learn about a few different types of rebuttals, whether they're pre-prepared or impromptu. I'll teach you a few skills that you should find very helpful today. So first of all, we need to discuss the importance of rebuttal preparation. So before the debate, preparing rebuttals is vital for anticipating and countering your opponent's arguments effectively. So we're going to explore the benefits of pre-preparation now, and we'll find out how it will enhance our ability to respond during a debate to any arguments made by our opponents. So, first of all, what do we think could be some important benefits of pre-preparing a list of rebuttals? Who's got an idea? We're under taco frogs today. Victoria, we're not turtle burgers anymore, we're taco frogs. John, what's something important about pre-preparing a list of rebuttals?
I think you already preparing a rebuttal speech, and when your opponent say the argument that was actually in your rebuttal, you could pass the list to the next speaker of your team, and then the next speaker of your team will rebuttal, and you don't have to listen to the opponent and then write it down.
Very good, very good. So if we have a list of pre-prepared rebuttals, very good point, John. So if we have a list of pre-prepared rebuttals, if our opponent happens to mention any arguments that we have pre-prepared for, then we've already got part of our rebuttal done. We don't have to listen quite so much. We don't have to be taking notes quite so much if we've already got that rebuttal done. There may be, however, there may still be some points that the opponent makes that are slightly different to the points you've got written down. So you may still need to take some notes just to be able to respond to your opponent as specifically as possible. But very good answer, John. If you pre-prepare and your opponent uses it, it makes your rebuttal work easier. Good job. Who else has some ideas? Why would pre-preparing rebuttals be an advantage to your team? John, another answer. What's your why do you think preparing rebuttals is important?
Because you have already prepared, so you could find some of the evidence on the internet, and you can work out with your teammates to make your rebuttal stronger.
Very good. Very good. Although you're allowed to pass notes between debaters, but I don't think you're allowed to communicate with your teammates unless it's for the reply speech preparation. But good idea. The other reason that I'll give you, and this is a pretty big one. Goodness gracious. All right, I'm staying out of the chat box, too distracting. So yeah, one of the biggest reasons that it's important to pre-prepare your rebuttal is because to be able to do so, you need to be able to understand your opponent's point of view on the issue. So if you have to do enough research so that you understand the issue as well as your opponent does, then you're able to, yeah, I'm trying to think of the correct word for it, but basically you are able to negate a lot of your opponent's arguments if you've already thought about them from their point of view. Because if you thought about them from their point of view, you can then go back to your own team's point of view and craft the perfect response to it. So yeah, you're really able to, yeah, cancel out a lot of your opponent's arguments. If you pre-prepare your rebuttals, it can be immensely valuable. I strongly recommend you guys do that. So that's why it's so important to pre-prepare. Next, we're going to have a talk, and I've got some notes written here. But active listening, that's a very important part of our, it's a very important skill we need to be good at debating. And so when we say active listening, we don't mean making it look like you're listening, but in actual fact, your brain's off with the birdies over here. Your active listening actually wants to be you listening to the person talking so that you're able to, what's the word I'm looking for? So that you're able to, well, remember and take more effective notes of what they say. Sorry, guys, give me 2 seconds. I'm just looking for my notes here, and then we can discuss some active listening techniques.
Five hours later.
No, it's going to be more like 6.5. I don't know what I've done with these notes. My apologies, guys. I'm a bit disorganized today. Okay, so so the first thing that we need to actually be able to do when we listen is to be able to listen. So I've got a few points here. So when somebody says something to you, it's going to be almost impossible for you to remember it word for word unless you're one of those like photographic memory people that can remember absolutely every detail that anybody says. You're just not going to remember it. So the first tip, and I'll actually share a whiteboard here so we can take a list. So the first active listening skill is actually listening to what the person's saying, actually not thinking about anything else, not thinking about that cool game of Roblox or what's the other one? Minecraft that you're going to play after the debate's over. Don't think about any of that. Actually think about and listen to what your opponent is saying. So that's number one, actually listening. Number two.
You spelled actually wrong.
Oh, I did, didn't I? There is an A in there. Thank you. See, I was actively listening. Someone told me I misspelt the word. So the second skill I would say is quite important, and these aren't in any particular order. These are just a list of skills that you should look into, is learning to paraphrase. So to paraphrase is basically to be able to listen to or read a sentence and then be able to put it into your own words. So for example, I'm just trying to think of a, so let's say that I was talking to you and I thought every detail was important. So I might say something to you. I'm just trying to think of an example. This drink that I'm, camera, there we go. So this drink that I'm drinking is blue. It is a sports drink that contains 4 essential electrolytes, and it helps me recover after I work out. So if you were to take notes down of that, all of that might be a bit much. So you might just say, Michael's sports drink is blue. It helps him recover after he works out. See, so you've said all the exact same things, but you've just paraphrased it. You put it into a way that you can remember the detail that is important to you. So to be able to paraphrase, that's an important skill. Because like I say, these people are going to be talking quite fast. You've already seen a lot of their, what do you call it? You've already seen a lot of their, I've gone blank. You've already seen a lot of examples, sorry, of people debating. So, God, I'm not having a good day today. My apologies, guys. Yeah, you've already seen a lot of examples of mock debates. The debaters speak really quickly, so you're not going to have the ability to remember absolutely everything that they've said. So if you can just listen to, say, every 1 or 2 sentences and then just quickly jot down a note if you think it's an important argument. And then, so just by jotting down a note here and there, it helps you to be able to paraphrase this information, or again, put it into an order that helps you remember it. So can anyone else think of any active listening skills that they've perhaps used in the past? I'll give you another one. Display empathy. So empathy is being able to see or feel the situation from the other person's point of view. So you know how when you're having an argument with somebody, I don't know, let's say you and a friend are going to go to the movies, but you both want to see a different movie, so you have an argument. So the initial reaction that you might take is, well, they just don't want to do what I want to do. They're trying to be difficult. They're trying to be mean. Now that's not that's not using your empathy. So using your empathy would be if you took a moment and said, well, they're my friend. They're not trying to be mean to me. Maybe this is just a movie that they really want to watch, or maybe they've been a fan of this story for a long time and they finally want to see the movie, or something like that. You try and look for why they're doing things or why they feel or think a certain way. So if you're able to do that, again, that will just help you further with your own debating. Because if you can think about where they're coming from, and you know, they're not just trying to ruin the world because they're taking this bad stance that you don't agree with. Think about why do they think they're doing the right thing? That's basically empathy. And then you can use that, of course, to, very good, Tina. Yeah, you can use you can use your empathy to work around your opponent's argument and debate skills. So that can be a very good technique to use. We had Tina send one in the chat box. And our next skill is taking notes. So again, unless you're a photographic memory person, and they're like 1 in every several million, I think, very, very rare. Your ability to take notes is going to be a very valuable active listening skill. Now, whenever I go to take notes, I manage to do it, but I struggle a bit sometimes because as I'm writing, I start to think about the things I'm writing rather than thinking about listening to the person speaking. So then I've kind of got these 3 weird loops going on in my head, and sometimes I go a bit crazy, but with enough practice and enough effort, taking detailed notes can be a very valuable skill you can use. Very good, Tina. So that would actually come back to number 3, displaying empathy. So Tina's just sent in another message. It says, if you've already written another speech for the opposing side, you can look through the arguments and find some counterattacks. Very good. So that comes back to pre-planning your rebuttals so that you start to think about which arguments the other team's going to make. So they've got their list of arguments here, and then you can start to plan your rebuttals and plan your counterattacks. Very good, guys. So number 5, I offer a caveat, which means this is a good technique, but there's also exceptions to the rule. Where is it here? Avoid interrupting. Unless it's an official complaint. Excuse me. So if you need to launch a, oh, got the hiccups now. So if you need to launch a point of information or a point of order, that's fine. You can do that. You're allowed to do that. But obviously when it is your opponent's turn to talk, don't sit there and try and interrupt them and cut in every 10 seconds to try and go, nope, that's wrong. Nope, that's no. We just listen to what they say and we formulate our rebuttals when it's our turn to talk. Unless, of course, again, you're launching an official point of information. Okay. Now I'll give you 1 or 2 more. Just going through my list here. Now, so non-verbal communication, we'll make that our last one today before we move on. So non-verbal communication, that's things like your body language, your posture, your hand gestures, lots of these different things that we use to communicate without speaking. So you can use these in your active listening. So for example, while your opponents are talking, are you sitting there with your pen and your notepad or your pen and your paper, and are you taking notes? Are you watching them? Well, yeah, are you watching what they're doing to pick up on perhaps any weaknesses in their arguments? Are you watching them? Are you while you're paying attention, or are you just trying to sneakily scroll through TikTok on your phone and just looking over at them once in a while So these things can make a very big difference to our listening, because I've noticed that when I'm interested in something and I want to learn about it, I'll sit forth into it. I'll lean into it. But if I'm not really interested in something, as much as I try, I kind of just tend to drift off over here, and before long I'm just staring off over there and my eyes are glazed over. Like you can tell I'm bored. But somehow the actual act of looking like you're paying attention actually helps you to pay attention. So this non-verbal communication stuff can be quite powerful too. So we've got a list of six quite good techniques there, and there are many others that we can use for our that we can use to improve our debating skills. And they're all just called active listening techniques. There are a lot of other ones, things like reflecting feelings, mirroring, avoid judgment, mindful listening, stuff like that. But those ones are either kind of similar to the ones we've just talked about, or they don't really apply because you can't kind of nod and affirm what the other team's saying in a debate, because you're trying to prove each other wrong, not agree. But those are some good active listening techniques. The next thing I'd like to talk about is understanding your opponent's arguments. So we mentioned this in the pre-preparing rebuttal section a little while ago, but if we understand our opponent's arguments, again, that's talking about empathy. We're able to understand the argument from their point of view. So if we know how they're thinking and we know why they're thinking that way, we can find ways to poke a hole in it. So strategies for identifying and understanding opponents' arguments and evidence are crucial for formulating effective rebuttals. So we'll explore some methods to dissect and analyze their positions to better be able to counter our opponents. So first of all, what do we have to do to be able to understand our opponent's arguments? What's the first thing we need to do? Yes, Andrew.
We need to listen to them first thing.
Very good. So we need to listen to them. But even before we've listened to their arguments, what do we need to do? Or what do we need to know to be able to understand our opponent's arguments? We need to know our opponent's side of the argument. So, for example, if we go back to maybe an example that I used a little while ago, I was running a debate class and we had a debate. Oh God, what was the topic? It was something to do with, I think it was, should video games be considered a sport? And it was actually fascinating that the arguments that won that debate were actually counter arguments. So it was because, for example, I'll explain it, and then I'll give you an example. So because one of the teams took the time to understand the other team's perspective, they weren't just making arguments about why they were right and why video games should be considered a sport or why they shouldn't have been. I can't remember which team it was. But basically, instead of saying why they were so strong, they started to point out reasons why their opposing team's arguments were weaker. And so by doing that, because I actually took the time to understand, their strongest pieces of evidence were actually coming from evidence that looks like it should have supported their opponents. So if you really do your research and you look into all of these, look into both sides of the debate, you'll actually be amazed at some of the brilliant arguments that you can find. You know, like even if it's just completing a piece of evidence, you know, such as one team may use a statistic that points in their favor, but the second half of that sentence may be, however, there is an opposing rather large number of people that find adverse effects to this. So even just doing things like that, you can really improve your own understanding, and you'll pick up all these great little tidbits of knowledge that you can use to actually potentially win the debate for your team. So does anybody have any ideas? Very good, Andrew. So does anybody have any ideas how they might try to read and analyze their opponent's position, or how they might better try and understand their opponent's point of view in a debate? Who has an idea? So I've already given you guys one. You might try to search for evidence that your opponents would use to build their arguments nice and strong. Gia-An, what's your idea?
Active listening. I don't know.
Good. So we're thinking about even before the debate now. So during our research and preparation phase. So we're not even at the debate yet. The debate's like a week away. What could we do to perhaps learn about our opponent's point of view? Good. So you could do a brainstorming session. Tina said you can think of the arguments of the opposing team. Very good. What else could we do? Does anyone have any ideas? Victoria, stop sending me pictures of turtle burgers and give me an answer. Okay, give me a moment to find my list of examples here. Yep, another 12 hours.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Well, I think mostly to understand the opponent's arguments, it's just to research. But what I like to do is I try to pretend that I'm from the opposing team to actually feel like I'm on the opposing team. So at that moment, I can come up with more convincing arguments to like backfire my own team's arguments. And that way, when I try to look for flaws from the opponent's arguments, because there are a lot of flaws in every argument, especially when you're beginners like this. So what beginners, to me, in my opinion, tend to do is that they have a lot of flaws in their own arguments, and that when they put their perspective from an outsider perspective and they look back, they can find that flaws. And that way you can find more rebuttals for the opponent's arguments. And that's how I try to understand opponents' arguments in my experience. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Maya. So Maya just brought up an absolutely brilliant point of view there, guys. So if you, whether you take turns or you just pick somebody, but if you have somebody to actually take the role of the opposing team, and it's their job to just pick as many holes in your arguments as possible, you can actually build up a very, very rock solid defense and case there. Because if you've already thought about as many holes as your opponents could pick in your arguments, then you can think of solutions for those just to build up the armor a bit more and make your team's case even stronger. So very, very good there, Maya, as well as discovering weaknesses in your opponents. You can also discover weaknesses in your own team as well. Good. Scrutinizing the logic and the structure the author uses to present their arguments. Good, Andrew. Very good. Can you, there you are. Can you expand on that a bit more for us, please?
What?
You sent the message scrutinizing the logic and the structure the author uses to present their argument.
Okay, so I think that I can suggest improvement to the argument and point down counter argument, but ultimately my point in the analysis is to evaluate the logic and quality of the support they provide for their claim.
Very good. Okay, so I'll give you guys a few others as well, a few other ways to understand your opponent's arguments. So the first thing that we can do and some of these will be very practical. Some of them, I admit, would be reserved for higher levels of debating when it's like your entire life. But some of these techniques can be quite good for analyzing arguments. So a good place to start, or a good skill to start with, would be examining assumptions. So if I was to say to you, for example, if I was to ask you a question like, what are your thoughts on, I don't know, what are your thoughts on social media and its impact on society? Now, some of you would say some good things, some of you would say some bad things. But you'd all say different things, and that is what we would call your assumption, or what you believe you know about a particular issue. And so if you can find a way to discover your opponent's assumptions, you can find a very good place to start. You can find a very good place to start dissecting their arguments from. So what I mean by that is, I'm just trying to think of an example. So if you were to ask me about
Gender stereotype.
Gender stereotypes, let's not have that conversation. So I'm just trying to think of one. So I don't know. I'll keep this one light and easy. So light and breezy. So if you were to ask me about my favorite type of movies, I'm just thinking of an example. So, and my answer would straight out be horror movies. Love horror movies, thriller movies, violent movies, gory movies, all that sort of stuff. I love it. So based on that, you could make a few assumptions about me. And so from that, if we were having a debate about movies, for example, the fact that you know my favorite type of movie is a horror movie you could start to analyze all of my, what am I trying to say here? You could start to analyze all of the arguments that I may make based around the fact that I've said that I like horror movies the best. So you can start to like look for little patterns based off of information that you've been given or that you've found out. So if you can learn a few things about your opponents, then you can, I suppose you can learn where the arguments are coming from. And if you know that, then that's where you can go to plan your attack to win the debate. So that's a good. I am not Tina. Tina's just sent me a message that says, you're a psychopath then, since you like horror things. No, I just love horror movies. They're just so good. My second favorite genre is comedy, by the way. Horror first, then comedy. So does that mean I'm a psychopath, but I'll laugh about it? So we've discussed another good understanding opponents' arguments technique already. And that's look for inconsistencies. So, sorry, not look for inconsistencies, predict counter arguments. I'm reading the wrong thing. So if we predict what they're going to say to us, we can build up a stronger defense, and two, we can forget the other thing I was going to say. So we can build up a stronger defense and we can make a more targeted attack at our opponents. And as well, another good one is if you can evaluate the structure of their speech. So what that means is, how have they set their speech up? Is there a specific order that they're giving out information in? Is there a particular way they organize their thoughts, or a particular way they present their evidence? So if you can find these things in your opponents. Yes, Lily, I did see you. Put your hand up again if you've got a question. But yeah, so if you can evaluate the structure that your opponent's using, then again, you can use that as a potential point of attack. Because if you notice that they need to present their evidence or their information a certain way, if you notice that, then perhaps you could trip them up by presenting a rebuttal, maybe in that format or in a different format that they can't quite come back from. But yeah, that can be another good technique to trip your opponents up, understand their arguments better. Okay. So effective note taking. Now, this is the third part of the puzzle, because if you can listen to it and or if you can listen to it and understand it, the next key is remembering it. Because how are you going to remember 2 sentences that were said 3 minutes ago when this guy just kept talking and talking and talking? It's going to be very, very difficult. So taking notes can be a very effective strategy. Now, when I say take notes, you're not going to sit there and transcribe every single word that this person is saying, because that's just going to be very impractical. But if you find methods to just take down the most important information that they, that they present. Shorthand, yeah. But yeah, if you find a way to take down notes in the the quickest, most effective way possible, then you can really maximize the amount of information that you. Yes, I can. I'll answer that question next. Actually, I'll answer it now, seeing as I'm thinking about it. So just going back to a question, sorry, that Maya asked, explain a bit more about how understanding the opponent's organization of speech can help you understand their arguments. So, I mean, most of the ways that people organize their debating arguments, it's going to be pretty similar, but some of those differences may affect how the information is understood. So if you can notice how your opponents are structuring their speech, like obviously it's going to be introduction first, but do they do their rebuttals first? Do they do their substantive first? You know, what order do they do it in? Do they break it up? Do they go bit by bit? Like, how do they do it? Things like that it takes time, but things like that can teach you where the speaker feels they have a weakness, because the biggest thing we're always taught to do is to showcase our strengths and hide our weaknesses. So if you can notice, if you notice that a certain speaker is delivering their speech a certain way, or it can even come down to what order they present their arguments in, like how are they connecting all of their logic? It can just help you understand them a little bit better. And if you can understand them a little bit better, you can eventually learn how to just honestly, like you can pretty much see their weaknesses as soon as they start speaking, and you can just pick them apart during your rebuttals. So yeah, that one's probably a bit more of an advanced tactic. But yeah, if you understand how your opponent formulates their thoughts, you can again think of a way to work around that and kind of catch them in a checkmate with your arguments or your rebuttals. Okay, so let me find my notes on effective note taking. I just need another 7.5 hours, please.
Wait, just asking Mr. Michael, is there going to be a mock debate today?
Not a mock debate. Or actually, yeah, no, there will be a mock debate today. We'll give you your motion and your 15-20 minutes to prepare.
Okay. 7.5 hours is up.
I did ask for 7.5, so I've still
Teacher
got.
Michael, what is the topic of the mock debate?
We will release it at the end when we're about to go into the breakout room.
$25 hours later.
25 hours, you drama queen. Okay, so excuse me, I'll start another whiteboard and we'll list down a few of these good note-taking techniques. Yep, drama queen. It means you're overly dramatic. Okay. So now we have note-taking skills. So number one, use keywords. So again, this may take you a bit of time. Ooh, what's this? Andrew, you've sent me a way that you display your notes. Very good. Very good. Okay, so I'll give you guys a few tips here. So the first one, use keywords. So
Teacher Michael,
yes,
what's the keywords? Is it a key with some of the words on there?
oh my goodness, you're too young to have children, so you're not allowed to use dad jokes. That's the rules. I don't make them, I just have to enforce them. So okay, so I'm going to read you guys a sentence, and then I'm going to pick somebody at random to read it out to me. So create visual representations of concepts, connecting related ideas for a holistic view. Okay, Victoria, how much of that do you remember, or how many notes did you take of that sentence? She's just looking at me scared. How much of that sentence did you manage to take down as notes?
Maybe.
I'll say it again, guys. Create visual representations of concepts, connecting related ideas for a holistic view. So that's how fast somebody's going to be speaking during a debate. And if that sentence that I just uttered was an important one for one of your rebuttals, you need to be able to take down as much information as possible. So that sentence, I'll say it a bit slower. It's called, it's creating visual representations of concepts, connecting related ideas for a holistic view. So if you needed to take that down, you would use keywords. So a keyword is a focus on the most important words in the sentence. So if I was to remove a word from the sentence, could you still understand the sentence? That's the question.
Connecting ideas for a holistic view.
Pardon?
You say something like collecting ideas for a holistic view?
I did. Connecting related ideas for a holistic review. Pretty close. But yeah, so the keywords are the words in the sentence that are used that you absolutely need. So that's basically like taking say a 15-word sentence down, but you might only need, say, 6 or 7 words to do so, and you've still managed to capture the entire meaning. So that's one way that we can use to take notes. We can use keywords. We can use abbreviations. So you can develop this system yourself, or you can look up an already discovered note-taking system, but you can actually, so if you use abbreviations, you can save yourself some time on the note-taking. So
give it here.
It's not important or not. Oops.
So instead of typing a full sentence like this, you can take notes in short form. So that's abbreviations. Just shorten the words in a way that you understand them, obviously, and you can read your notes. That's going to be important, making sure that you can understand the notes you've taken. Because there's nothing worse going short form, than going to read the notes and going, what did I write? Very, very bad. Very, very bad. Okay, so another note-taking technique that we can use. Well, this is more just general organization skills. but we can create headings. So rather than just writing a note down on the piece of paper and going, yep, okay, here, speakers might need to make jumps in logic. So they might need to connect the dot point from here to over here to down here, rather than everything is going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pick up. So if you create headings for your pages of notes, you can pre-organize where the different types of notes go. So is this note going to help me in my rebuttal? Is this something I feel could help our reply speech at the end?
Why am I in the music in the movie screen?
I don't know. Victoria's been sucked into the movie screen. She can't get out. She's trapped now.
That a movie
Dramatic music, please.
Okay, so the next tip that I can tell you about is called margin annotations. Very good, Andrew. Yes, we can use.
Teacher Michael, look at Victoria.
She's in a kaleidoscope. My goodness. But yeah, so Andrew sent us in another tip. You can use your. You can use little codes. So like you can color code things. You can use little shapes like circles or stars to mark important information. Or we can do what we call margin annotation. So you know how this is going to be ironic because the paper I'm showing you doesn't actually have one, but you know how when you just never mind. But yeah, so on a sheet of paper there, I don't even know if I can show you this sheet of paper, but you know how sometimes you have a little bit of a margin off to the left-hand side of where you're writing? It's that little line down the side of the page. So if you're taking notes, you can use that margin just to add any extra or any important details that you need to know for when you've got to for when you've got to take your notes. So you can add detail upon details with your notes. And I'll give you guys one more. And this is an important one because this will help you. So if you're taking notes with your dot points, it's like that can be a very good way to take notes to prepare for your rebuttals. Because it just gives you lots of dot points that you can kind of say one and expand on it and then go to the next one, expand on that. But at the end as well, if you spend even just a few seconds just trying to summarize the dot points to try and apply some, to try and give them a good flow and try and connect the logic for yourself, you can make your note taking even more effective that way. I mean, that's more for just your reading them out and presenting them. But if you can summarize your dot points, summarize your notes so that you already have a base idea of where you want your speech to start from. And then from there, it's just easier to build out and make more advanced points. Hey, watch the language, guys. Watch the language, everybody. No swearing. Yeah, everybody calm down or I will have to revoke your rights to be able to use this, to use the chat function. Okay, so that is effective note taking. So first of all, structuring your rebuttal is key to its impact. We'll discuss, so rebuttals, I should say, the way to actually structure a rebuttal is, so usually you make the decision first. Are you going to do the rebuttals first or your substantive first? Normally, I would actually, or I would always actually do the rebuttals first. For me personally, it's just because I like to close off any old issues, finish those off before I start making new ones, because that way I've got less of a mess to clean up with my speech, or by the end of my speech, there's less of a mess to clean up. So if I address the old issues first before moving on to the new ones. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry, I was just dealing with a bit of craziness in the chat. Okay, so yeah, with structuring your rebuttals, generally speaking, it's very similar to structuring an argument that you'd be making for your team. So generally speaking, you would want to start with, what is the argument that your opponent raised that you are rebutting to? So that if you think about this in the form of a teal paragraph, gone blank. So the argument made by your opponent that you want to rebut, that's like your topic sentence. Next, your explanation would go in, so the explanation portion of the paragraph would go into talking about how is their argument wrong. So you would then present a counter or a rebuttal to the argument you wish to rebut against. So that's where you explain how it's wrong. You might wish to even introduce some counter evidence, so evidence that proves they're wrong and that you're right. And then link it all back and just remind everybody what you've just done. So it's a very similar topic to, or it's a very similar structure to, just formulating regular arguments. And of course, if you, if you do go into, if you do start structuring your rebuttals similarly to your arguments, you'll notice that your rebuttals will be clearer and they'll be easier for everybody to understand. Okay, one final point that we'll discuss today before we go into your breakout rooms is strategies for crafting a reply speech. So I've actually got, I'll use actually an old example reply speech. So the reply speech, as we know, this is the final speech in the debate for either team. And the 4 sections that we want to outline very good, Andrew. Very good. So, so the 4 parts of a reply speech. So first of all, we've got the introduction. So that's where we just briefly want to restate the motion or the topic. We want to acknowledge what has been said by the previous speakers and briefly state the purpose of the reply speech. So I've got an example down here. So introduction. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The motion before us today, this House believes that schools should abolish homework, has brought forth some insightful arguments from both sides. I would like to summarize our stance and address some critical points. So that first bit there, these are just really short sections of a reply speech. You would expand on them a bit more to fill out your 2 minutes. And yeah, so you saw all of those important points up there were met by the introduction. Next, you want to summarize the main points. So you want to not just summarize the best arguments of your team, but you also want to talk about how they were addressed. So you might want to talk about, well, pretty much any of the good points. So don't mention an argument and then say, oh, but the other team had a really good rebuttal to that one, because that doesn't make your side of the debate look strong. So don't mention anything like that. Try and stick to just anything that makes your team look the strongest. We will be starting the mock debate soon. And yes, I'll send a PDF of today's slides. And I'll also send a few. I'll also send a few of the techniques that we discussed as
Are we
well.
going to the breakout room yet?
Nearly. Give me another 5 minutes and we'll be done.
5 minutes or 5 hours?
5 minutes, Gia. My goodness. So number 2, summary of main points. So I've already talked about that. So you want to highlight the most crucial points that have been made in your favor. Note they're in your favor. So don't go mentioning strong points for your opponent's team in your reply speech, because this is your time to finally try and win the debate for good. So summary of main points. Our team has shown that homework can lead to unnecessary stress, limit family time, and often doesn't contribute to real learning. We have provided evidence that alternative learning methods can be more effective. So there you've just summarized all your own main points, presented your strongest evidence and arguments, just to remind the judges, this is why we should win. The third section is the refutation. So this is where you want to identify the main arguments made by the opposing team, refute these arguments, so you want to one more final try to disprove those arguments by either using evidence or logical reasoning. And finally, point out any contradictions or weaknesses in the opposition's case. So this is where you just remind the judges, not only were we this good, they were this bad, for lack of a better term. So, however, the opposition claims that homework teaches responsibility and reinforces classroom learning. While this may be true in some cases, we have demonstrated that these benefits are often outweighed by the negative impacts, especially when homework is excessive or not thoughtfully assigned. So we see there that just a short little example sentence about how we've attempted to debunk the arguments put forth by the opposition. And then in the conclusion, again, just summarize the key points of the debate, emphasize why your team's position is the strongest, and make a compelling final statement to persuade the audience. So an example of that would be, in conclusion, the evidence and arguments presented today clearly show that the drawbacks of homework outweighs the benefits. We must prioritize the well-being and real learning experiences of our children over traditional practices that may not serve them best. Thank you. So we see that, and again, that's just a very basic reply speech. So yeah, that's just a very basic reply speech. Yours would be built up a bit more on top of that. So give me 2 moments, guys. I'll be right back and we'll get you into your breakout rooms. Yes, I will make. Do you mean of the reply speech, John?
Yes, please.
Okay, yes, I will get a copy of that sent over as well.
Teacher. He's gone now.
If everybody gives me 2 seconds, I will go and get the breakout room sorted. Relax.
1,000, 2,000,
Relax.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5,
5,
6,
6,
7,
7,
8,
8,
9,
9,
10,
10,
11,
11,
12,
12,
13,
13,
14,
14,
15,
15, 16,
18, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42,
It's very noisy, bro.
46,
4, 45, 46, 47, 48,
48, 49,
49, 30, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 57, 58, 61, 62,
Okay, so let I
5,
see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So we got 16 SH student helper. So how many rooms should we do? Should we do 5 rooms, Teacher Michael? So that 5 room, okay? So each room will have about 3 SH.
Yep.
And then about 10 participants. 10 yeah. 5 room, okay?
Yep. 5 or 6.
Up to you. I'm thinking there might be 4 because we want some in outside. So 5 room and 3
Yep.
and 1 room outside. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
All right. So have you decided yet? Have you split the room yet?
No,
Not yet. I
haven't.
do it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So everyone, when you go into the room, can you make sure that you choose whether you are in a opposition or proposition, and then decide if you are speaker 1, 2, or 3. If you don't have a reference, you don't rename yourself, then SH will do it for you. SH you can allocate if the participant do not have a references. SH can decide that just randomly put one team in the opposition, start with O, and another team is proposition, start with B. So your name should start with O1, O2, O3, or B1, B2, B3. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Now I assign automatically, but then I will move the SH into the what we call into the make sure that each into a breakout room. Now should I let it assign automatically, Teacher Michael?
Yeah, just assign automatically.
Yeah. And then
Yep.
if you want to be together, then you can assign automatically. All right.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Create 5 room.
Apparently, Mr. Michael is a wolf.
Yes. All right. Now, if you want to be in the same team, it's okay. You just leave the room, and then let I see. I allow for you to choose the room. Okay. Yeah. All right. Open. Right. SH. You can stay there, and then I change you to the different. Yeah. Maybe one SH stay in the main room or no?